Yeah, she keeps herself in the hunt, and it's non-stop action here in Norway. Magnus Carlsen now starts his game against Praggnanandhaa, and wow, this one is going to be fun. It's the London system, everyone at home. Love it or hate it, Magnus has to try and win this game.
He played the counterattack, he's playing the London now. What is going on here, David?
I promised I had nothing to do with it, Anna.
Are you sure? Fishy, very fishy.
Plays the London here, and Prag well prepared though, quickly responding with the bishop d6 variation.
Yeah, it looks like it's transposed almost to just a queen's gambit, declined here. Except with black's bishop out of its pawn chain, Magnus goes pawn hunting now. He hits the b7 pawn. That's the downside to developing one's bishop too early. This pawn often undefended. I must admit, I've never seen this exact branch of the London system before. I hope Prag is well prepared, otherwise he might well be facing some difficult questions.
And he starts thinking, so it certainly was a good choice by Magnus. And just when I thought he started thinking, he immediately makes a move. Praggnanandhaa is very well prepared in this variation too, from what it looks like. But Magnus is keeping his time advantage. There's the extra 3 minutes you get in Armageddon. But draw odds for black, that is the format. So far, very solid from black's perspective.
So far, very solid for black, but so far we haven't had enough to party about here in round A, but it's officially happened, by the way. We have to call out that we have a new Guinness World Record downstairs. Oskar and Uden Nanda, Rameshbabu to talk about, but congratulations, boys, and we're going to unpack so much of it and celebrate later on their stream at the end of the day.
Yeah, 48 minutes, and we will be celebrating for them. Who will be celebrating in this game, though, yet to be seen. Magnus has a small advantage, I would say, just due to his pawn on d4, extra space. He backs up that pawn with a rook. Again, this is a Magnus Carlsen type of position with small but long-term pluses. Here, though, Prag, again, great tip for everyone at home. Break out. If your opponent occupies the center, challenge that center. Pawn breaks are the key. Almost symmetrical pawn structure, though, now. Prag's been so impressive today, Anna.
Very impressive, very solid, very pragmatic against the greatest player of our time, who had really so many praises toward Prag after their match at the World Cup. And also here, it's Prag, the only person, the only player who beat Magnus Carlsen earlier in the event in classical chess.
Indeed. And well, he still has a time advantage, but it's not 3 minutes. It's almost down to 2. Trying to make things happen there. I think rook c1 comes next, tries to take advantage of the black queen on c5 and get the rooks going on those open highways, the c and the d files, respectively.
I have a funny move here for black. You don't move the rook, but play bishop h5 to trade more pieces.
Wow, that is clever. Spicy stuff. The bishop goes to h5, trading off a beautiful white bishop. Okay, slight slip from Prag. Maybe he should have gone for that, Anna, because now the black rook looks really awkward. It's going to be hit in various lines by the white knight jumping to c6. Maybe not now, because the black rook will simply slide across to attack that knight, but watch out. I like Danny's move. Keep it simple.
I was going to say, but my move rook to c1 is even better now, because now knight c takes b5 is a threat that also attacks the rook. So rook to c1, in fact, it's on the board. Magnus likes it too. All kinds of discovered threats, all kinds of awkwardness for that rook. This is the position where people blunder. The rook is awkward, the queen is attacked with the discovered move by the knight coming. The knight's coming to c6. This is super tough for Prag.
Ooh, he slides his queen across to the other flank. It looks like that's far from where the action's actually happening. I wonder whether the knight jumps in now for Magnus Carlsen. He does leap in with that knight. And wow, counterattack by Prag, leaving his rook hanging.
Okay, that is a rook sacrifice.
Magnus needed to take that knight, otherwise the bishop on f3 would have hung, and a huge attack for black. Checkmating attack potentially, so Magnus now, look at that, shake of the head.
And he shakes his head. He missed knight e5, and playing a4 might even be a move he wants back, because the moment he played it, I feel like he had that realization or reminder, hey, this is Armageddon. Like a4, he played it, and I know that grimace was like, oh wait, that may be the best objective move, but it's probably not the right move when I need to keep winning chances on the board. That was not a happy Magnus after his a4 pawn push.
Yeah.
95, what a move it was by Prag.
Amazing.
Oh my gosh.
We talked about his calculation skills, and that's what gives you the edge sometimes at this top level. Magnus was playing on feel, going in the right direction there with his pieces, but Prag throwing a spanner in the works. And look at this, he's trying to bully Magnus by offering a trade of queens, giving the Black King some luft now, some air to breathe. Looks like Prag is on the brink of just locking this game down. White still for choice due to a more active bishop, and maybe the black A pawn weaker than the white B pawn. But ultimately, this should be a level position.
Level position, and the party starting soon below our studio. I don't know if our viewers can hear the music, but the Guinness World Record is gonna create so much hype.
It's gonna be
Just
hype.
a few
There's
meters
music
from us.
playing. I don't know if any drinks are coming out yet. They're going to be taking a victory lap here because every single game from here on out for those guys is just increasing their hold on the Guinness World Record. But all right, Magnus trying to increase his hold over the queen side. The A6 pawn being spied by the sniper on E2. But if you take B6 and just put rooks on B7 and B8, are we just getting a big trade of A for B pawn? If those two pawns come off and we have a 4-on-4 kingside, Magnus is going to lose this Armageddon battle.
Yeah, and it would be his second Armageddon loss in a row after we talked about him being the Armageddon king. The Farmageddon for Magnus Carlsen, just beating everyone at Armageddon. It looks like the tide has turned potentially, but maybe Prag missed a trick not trading the queens. I liked your idea, Danny, just get the queens off the board. A comparison here, white's queen much more active than its counterpart. So still alive and still with an almost 2-minute time advantage on the clock. Magnus Carlsen. Okay.
What can Prag do about this now that the queens are still on the board and his one is the one that's more passive? Is there any way he could activate his pieces and also get the F8 rook into the game?
Yeah, he suddenly has to be careful. I just realized if you play a move like rook to C8, there are tactics. Knight takes E6 would be a winning blow. Threatening checkmate on G7 and tactics in the air with rooks hanging on the A7 square. He brings his queen forward to B6. Ooh, that hangs together by a thread. The black knight defends its queen.
I wonder if he even saw knight takes e6. He's lucky it all works, right? Because knight takes e6 is still tricky here. If you take with the queen, the rook hangs, but you can somehow take with the pawn, and there's no traps there. Does Magnus look to play a move like e4 and try to get that tactic on the board? Bishop f3, but similar idea. If that knight moves from d5, knight takes e6 is back on the agenda.
Yeah, white would win a pawn due to hanging pieces on this diagonal, the black queen, black rook behind it. So I think you have to leave the knight on d5. You might be left with an isolated pawn in the center. Suddenly, chances are live. Prag really regretting, surely, leaving the queens on the board. Magnus is great in queen endgames, great in just centralized queen positions in general. And Prag with tactical dilemmas to solve. That's why he's having to burn the clock now, suddenly, Prag.
He definitely is regretting the choice of keeping the queens on the board by now, I think.
Yeah, he defends his queen. Wise choice. Magnus will likely take this knight off the board.
Yeah, you don't want to let queen takes b2. Either that or b3. You either keep the pawn protected by the knight on c5, or you take d5. But I kind of like b3 because I want to avoid all kinds of trades. And if you give me a moment, I'd like to play like h4, h5 as white and keep the queen centralized, create pressure on the king side. All types of practical pressure is what to do here, especially with the time pressure coming.
I can tell you've watched Magnus play before, Danny. That's right up his alley, h4, h5.
Yeah, he must have calculated something concrete, though. He decides to take... He might still play for b3, by the way, not allowing a big trade of pawns for pawns here.
Yeah, keep some tension left. The white b pawn, a potential queen. The more pawns left on the board, the greater your winning chances in any endgame. Anna, what's your prediction? Do you think Prag's going to be able to hold this with only 2 minutes 50 on his clock?
This is a tough one. I feel like Magnus will win, but at the same time, I'm rooting for Prag to prove me wrong. It's kind of like both. Can I say both, Danny?
You're allowed to say both. That's okay. We know you don't want to be put on the spot with them. You're rooting for everyone. But all right, Magnus is playing for b3 now. The threat of taking d5 is much more real. Just because the pieces were traded doesn't mean it's not coming, and just because that game's going doesn't mean we don't have another one. Vaishali taking on Anna. This is a battle where Vaishali, if she can strike, she would slow down the tournament leader, and we would have a leapfrog at the top of the standings. I think it was Wen-Jun's victory, which, by the way, we still haven't given enough credit to. She beat Pia Cromling in this crazy game. We're going to make sure we give you a full game review and analysis. I may be wrong about the standings and the leapfrogging. I haven't checked it closely, but the point is it's a very, very close race at the top of Norway Chess Women.
Yeah, Vaishali would close the gap on Anna Muzychuk. Meanwhile, fireworks from Magnus Carlsen. Double exclamation point move, I can confirm. Knight e6 landing, forcing a queen trade. And Magnus, it's good knight versus bad bishop. Will it be good knight for Prag? It's going to be a horrible endgame to defend now. The black bishop, a real bystander to the action right now. This is Magnus's bread and butter, surely.
His territory, he loves it. Knight e6, didn't miss his chance to simplify matters. And now it is super hard to hold. That bishop on g6 is just wishing it could play. You can even move it to c2, but it doesn't matter because you're not actually threatening to take b3. So a really nice transition. We say that when pawns are on both sides of the board, you often do prefer the bishop, but when a knight is centralized, it neutralizes the power of the bishop in most cases, and this is no exception.
Prag jumping in. He's trying to somehow go after the white pawn. If the queenside pawns disappear, Prag will likely draw. But Magnus needs to keep the b-pawn alive. The world number one picks up a piece to fiddle with. He looks anxious. 3.5 minutes against just under 2 minutes. The Armageddon on the other side of your screens, on the right side of your screens there. Vaishali giving up her bishop pair. It looks like a great start for Anna Muzychuk on that board. Okay, brother, sister, both in action right now in the Armageddons.
Both of them in action and both of them are trying their very best. But can Prag defend this? He still needs to hold on to that a5 pawn. Rook c5 would be a way to defend the pawn, but it looks a bit suspicious that everything is just hanging in there by a thread.
Yeah, and Prag drops his bishop back, asking for a trade of one set of rooks. Due to white's weak back rank, you cannot yet go pawn grabbing. You need to give the white king some breathing space. Prag, yeah, he's such a great defender, but Magnus is the endgame grinder. So hard to see beyond Magnus here with the extra time on the clock.
Prag really is so tenacious. He's just done it so many times in this event. You really got to give him credit for it. It's the thing that doesn't show up in the scoreboard, even if he loses a game like he did to Hikaru Nakamura, right? What people didn't see if they didn't watch it was just how close Prag came to stealing a stalemate from the jaws of defeat there. He did lose to Hikaru, but just that's just one example on my brain right now. But yeah, this kid is just so tough to take down. But again, I think Magnus will get this job done. He's bringing the king over to d2, which is going to be a massive help because the king and knight collectively will guard the c2 square, which allows white to be more aggressive when you're not worried about that move any longer.
Wow, Prag drops his bishop back to f5 where it can be captured, wrecking the black pawn structure, but I think he just needed to keep this bishop on the diagonal. If he'd gone the other way, there would have been tricks with b4, black bishop hanging. Big question now, rook trade, who does it favor? Can Magnus go for this? Rook's off the board, it's pure knight versus bishop now.
Gotta be good for Magnus.
Surely, but the eval bar says no. How frustrating is that? There have been famous examples. I remember Karpov once drawing a game with an isolated queen's pawn like this. Good knight versus bad bishop, where he just sat. There was no way forward for white. But Magnus can maneuver around forever now with his knight. I expect this game to go on at least another 50-60 moves as Magnus tries to recircuit his knight and win a black pawn, Anna.
And that's the thing, the time will be a factor too, because even if Prag's position should be holdable, he will need to hold it with only 46 seconds left on the clock, and the increment is only 1 second. This is just so much time trouble.
Holy bejeezer snaps with that stat.
Wow.
13.5 out of 14 when he is white in Armageddon games. That shouldn't be legal.
That's against world-class opposition.
Yeah, he's not playing Armageddon games against me on the weekends. You know what I mean? I mean, this is a guy who's taken on the best players in the world and getting it done at a percentage that makes you question what you think is possible. All right, but Prag making us question what might be possible in terms of defense. Again, I expect he's going to lose this game because of the point Anna made, which was a great one. 1 second increment is not a lot on the clock, and it's going to be super tough in a scramble. The knights are so pesky, David. I said the bishop is preferred when there are pawns on both sides of the board, but the knight is preferred in spots like this. It can switch colors back and forth, poke and prod, and it's going to be really hard to deal with that now that you're under 20 seconds.
Yeah, and Magnus is creating a second front of attack. Black has a weak isolated pawn. And now white's trying to make a pass pawn of his own, but Prag retreats his king, giving up a pawn. That was the only way to keep the game going.
No way.
Praggnanandhaa, tenacious should be his middle name, because he's defending this like a lion. Magnus can go up a pawn. He does win that pawn But ultimately, 3 versus 2, Magnus running out of material. Can the Black Bishop hold off the White Knight? Still tough.
Still very tough, and as tough as Prag is defending, it's bound to happen that he cracks under so much time pressure, and the evaluation bar is jumping even further.
Yeah, I think now Magnus can even play g5, put the pawns where they sit, then bring the knight back, and the king and knight should be able to do work advancing on the dark squares specifically. Okay, he plays knight f4 check. Would love to get king maybe now g5, and then the king enters into e5. But again, it is hard, and you already said his middle name should be Tenacious, if that's Praggnanandhaa. I don't know what his middle name is. That is a stat for another day.
Yeah, in the meantime, look at this. He's put the black king on a really safe square where it cannot be checked. And the question is whether Magnus can enter with his own king. The bar shoots up. It's going to be difficult for black to defend now. The white king is coming. And yeah, I think, Danny, as you mentioned, eventually black king away, the white king will make further inroads into the position. It's going to be a long task, but inevitable now. Looks like Magnus Carlsen is going to extend that incredible run with white in Armageddon. As the other Armageddon, it's a repeat of this exact same opening line. Faruja against Nakamura. Looks like both players done their homework in the break there.
And the slight change with how the knight placement happened in this Armageddon game, but wow, crazy that it's the exact same opening. The board on our left is about to conclude. I feel like Prag with only 4 seconds left on the clock.
Yeah, and he does it. Magnus Carlsen gets the job done. It might even have been lower. The DGT has trouble keeping up with the human beings. Every once in a while, humans can do things better than computers can, and that might be someone who might be better at Armageddon than a lot of computers. He now moves to 14.5 out of 15 as white in Armageddon battles. Magnus Carlsen is a bad man in this format.
Yeah, with the white pieces, he is unstoppable in Armageddon. He didn't get that much chance in class.